The sterile hospital room glowed brightly under harsh white fluorescent lights overhead. On the narrow bed, a young handsome man lay completely unconscious, breathing softly through a ventilator tube. A Catholic priest stood quietly beside him, whispering gently, "Are you ready to say your sacred wedding vows?" The trembling woman in the simple dress choked back bitter tears. "I do." She wasn't the real intended bride, but the bride's devoted younger sister. Seconds later, something absolutely no one expected happened. Meet Emily Carter, 27 years old, elementary school teacher, simple, kind-hearted, always living in the shadow of her sister. She had long brown hair, wore inexpensive dresses, and never bothered with fancy jewelry. Emily had always lived quietly in the shadow of her older sister, Olivia, who was beautiful, wealthy, and engaged to Andrew Collins, a successful young businessman. Since childhood, Emily had endured constant comparisons. The younger daughter is sweet, but she's just not remarkable. Emily never fought back. She just quietly cared for her students and lived up to her responsibilities. On the day Olivia and Andrew got engaged, the whole family celebrated while Emily sat in a corner, smiling quietly. But disaster struck unexpectedly. Andrew was in a severe car accident just days before the wedding, falling into a deep coma. Olivia was devastated, suffered a breakdown, and left for psychological treatment abroad. The family was confused. The wedding was left hanging, and the groom still bore the title of fiancé while unconscious. Emily was the only one who stayed by Andrew's side every day. She read to him, wiped his forehead, believing he could hear her. The doctor said his chances of waking up were slim. The brain trauma was severe, but Emily refused to give up hope. Every morning before school, she would stop by the hospital. Every evening after work, she would return. She brought books Andrew had loved, played his favorite music softly, and talked to him about everything and nothing. The nursing staff began to recognize her as the devoted sister-in-law who never missed a day. "You should go home and rest," they would tell her. "He shouldn't be alone," Emily would reply simply. Other family members visited occasionally, but their visits became less frequent as weeks turned into months. Only Emily remained constant. She learned Andrew's daily routine from the nurses. She knew when his vitals were strongest, when he seemed most peaceful, when the doctors made their rounds. In her coat pocket, Emily kept an old ring that Andrew had once given Olivia, the same ring Olivia had returned to her before leaving. "Keep this for me. I don't have the courage anymore." Emily looked at it sometimes, wondering if Andrew would ever wake up to reclaim his old life. She had no romantic feelings for him initially. He was her sister's fiancé, nothing more. But as the days passed, sitting beside his unconscious form, reading to him, caring for him, something changed. Emily held the ring Olivia had entrusted to her, whispering to Andrew's still form, "Olivia asked me to keep this safe. She'll want it back when you wake up." But deep down, Emily was beginning to wonder if Olivia would ever return, and what that would mean for Andrew's future. As months passed, family and friends began to whisper, "Why does Emily keep clinging to her sister's fiancé?" Olivia's friends were particularly cruel. "She's probably dreaming of becoming a wealthy bride herself." Emily heard these comments but never responded. She just continued sitting by the hospital bed, reading stories Andrew had once enjoyed. The doctors delivered devastating news. Andrew's condition was deteriorating. His body was stable, but without any sign of consciousness. They couldn't be optimistic. "We're keeping him comfortable," the neurologist explained gently. "But you should prepare for the possibility that he may never wake up." The family gathered to discuss difficult decisions about Andrew's care. That's when Father Martinez, the family's longtime chaplain, made an unexpected suggestion. "There's something we could consider," he said hesitantly. "A bedside ceremony. Some families find it brings closure when they can fulfill the promises made before tragedy struck." Everyone looked around the room uncomfortably. "You mean a wedding? With Andrew unconscious?" someone asked. "It's been done before. A way to honor the commitment that was made, even when circumstances prevent a traditional ceremony." The problem was obvious. Olivia wasn't there. and no one knew when she might return from her treatment. Andrew's parents looked at each other with painful uncertainty. Andrew shouldn't die unmarried, his mother said quietly. He was so excited about the wedding. But Olivia isn't here, his father replied. That's when all eyes turned to Emily. Emily has been here every day, Andrew's mother said softly. She's been more devoted than anyone else. I couldn't, Emily protested immediately. That's not my place. I'm not Olivia. But your family, Father Martinez said gently. And sometimes family steps in when others cannot. Emily felt the weight of everyone's expectations pressing down on her. It would just be symbolic, Andrew's mother explained. A way to ensure he's not alone, that someone who cares about him is fulfilling the promises that were made. Emily looked at Andrew's peaceful face, remembering all the hours she had spent talking to him, reading to him, hoping for some sign that he could hear her. I don't know if I can, she whispered. You're the only one who's been here, his father said. You know him better than anyone else right now. Emily thought about Olivia, somewhere far away, trying to heal from her own trauma. She thought about Andrew, lying helpless, with no one to advocate for him except her. If I did this, Emily said carefully, it would only be to make sure he's not alone, not for me, for him. The family agreed that it was the right thing to do. Father Martinez arranged for a simple bedside ceremony that afternoon. Emily wore a plain blue dress, the nicest thing she owned. There were no flowers, no music, no celebration, just Emily, Andrew, the priest, and a few family members in the sterile hospital room. Do you, Emily, take Andrew to be your husband in sickness and in health for as long as you both shall live? Emily looked down at Andrew's motionless form, her heart breaking for the life he should have been living. I do, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. The heart monitor continued its steady beeping. The ventilator hummed quietly. Emily slipped the ring onto Andrew's finger, the same ring he had once given Olivia. The moment Emily finished speaking her vows, Andrew's fingers twitched slightly. A nurse gasped. Did anyone else see that? His hand just moved. Everyone in the room held their breath, staring at Andrew's still form, wondering if they had witnessed a miracle or just wishful thinking. The news spread through the hospital like wildfire. The coma patient moved when his sister-in-law said, I do. Some called it a miracle. Others dismissed it. Just coincidence. Don't read too much into it. But over the next few hours, Andrew showed more signs of consciousness. His eyes began to flutter. His breathing became more regular. By evening, he was awake, weak, confused, but undeniably awake. Emily was the first person he saw when he opened his eyes. Where am I? He whispered, his voice hoarse from the breathing tube that had just been removed. You're in the hospital, Emily said gently. You were in an accident. You've been unconscious for 3 months. Andrew tried to process this information, his eyes never leaving Emily's face. You've been here, he said. It wasn't a question. Emily nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. Andrew's memories of the coma period were hazy, like trying to remember a dream. But there were fragments, a voice reading to him, someone holding his hand, a presence that never left. I remember your voice, he said softly. The medical staff was amazed by Andrew's rapid recovery. Within days, he was sitting up, eating, beginning physical therapy. But the emotional complications were just beginning. When Andrew's parents explained what had happened about Olivia's breakdown, her departure, the bedside ceremony, Andrew was quiet for a long time. So Emily and I are married? He asked. It was just symbolic, Emily said quickly. Just so you wouldn't be alone. When Olivia comes back, we can... When is she coming back? Andrew interrupted. Nobody had an answer to that question. Andrew's rehabilitation progressed quickly, but during his recovery, something became clear to everyone watching. His connection wasn't with the absent Olivia, but with Emily. When the physical therapist worked with him, Andrew's eyes searched for Emily in the room. When doctors came for examinations, Andrew asked Emily to stay and help him understand what they were saying. When he had nightmares about the accident, Emily was the one who could calm him down. I know this is complicated, Andrew said to Emily one afternoon when they were alone. I know you think you were just standing in for Olivia. I was, Emily replied, but her voice lacked conviction. Were you? Andrew asked. Because during all those months when I was unconscious, it wasn't Olivia's voice I heard. It wasn't Olivia's presence I felt. It was yours. Emily looked down at her hands. The doctors say that coma patients often remember more than we think, Andrew continued. I remember you reading to me. I remember you talking about your students, your day, your hopes. I remember feeling like someone cared whether I lived or died. Of course I cared, Emily whispered. And I remember the exact moment I decided to come back, Andrew said. It was when I heard you say I do. Not because of the words, but because of how much love and commitment I heard in your voice. Emily started crying again. You brought me back to life, Andrew said simply. When Olivia's parents finally contacted her to explain what had happened, her response was unexpected. I'm glad, she said over the phone. Emily deserves happiness. And if Andrew is awake and recovering, that's what matters most. But they're married, her mother protested. Then maybe they should stay married, Olivia replied. I couldn't handle being there when he needed me most. Emily could. That tells you everything you need to know. Some family members were shocked by this turn of events. Others, who had watched Emily's devoted care over the months, said it was the most natural thing in the world. Andrew's recovery continued to progress rapidly. Within weeks, he was walking, talking normally, remembering most of his life before the accident. The only thing he couldn't remember clearly was why he had ever thought he wanted to marry anyone other than Emily. 6 months later, Andrew had fully recovered and returned to work. But when people asked him about his miraculous recovery, he always gave the same answer. I had someone worth waking up for. Emily never knew he was talking about her until the day he asked her to marry him again, this time while he was conscious to mean every word. After Andrew's recovery, many people changed their perspective on Emily's devotion. Those who had once mocked her for clinging to her sister's fiancé now spoke admiringly of her loyalty and love. Andrew recovered quickly, returning to work within months. But he was different now, more thoughtful, more appreciative of the simple things in life. He insisted on officially adopting Emily's students as his nieces and nephews, visiting her classroom and helping with school fundraisers. Emily continued teaching, but now she had someone who truly understood and supported her passion for education. A group of nurses at the hospital where Andrew had been treated wrote about their story in the hospital newsletter. True love doesn't need fancy wedding dresses. It just needs someone willing to stay every single day. Emily never sought recognition for what she had done. She simply continued living as she always had, caring for others and doing what needed to be done. But Andrew made sure she knew how much her devotion had meant. I want to do something, he told her one evening as they sat together in the same hospital room where he had awakened. He had asked to visit, wanting to thank the staff. What's that? I want to marry you properly, not because of obligation or circumstance, but because I choose you, because you chose me when choosing me was difficult. Emily smiled through her tears. Are you sure? We barely know each other outside of a hospital room. I know that you read to unconscious people because you believe they can hear you. I know that you give up your lunch break to tutor struggling students. I know that you stayed by a stranger's bedside for months because you couldn't bear the thought of him being alone. He paused, taking her hands. I know that when everyone else gave up on me, you didn't. And I know that I want to spend the rest of my life being worthy of that kind of love. They held their real wedding ceremony exactly 1 year after Andrew woke up, in the same hospital chapel where Emily had first said, I do, to his unconscious form. This time, Andrew was awake to say it back. Olivia sent flowers and a note, to the sister who taught me what real love looks like. The hospital staff attended as guests of honor, including the nurse who had first noticed Andrew's hand movement. Emily wore a simple white dress, still nothing fancy, because that wasn't who she was. But she had never looked more beautiful. Do you believe that a simple I do can change everything? If so, leave I believe in the comments below. Emily Carter's story shows us that real love isn't found in grand gestures or expensive weddings. but in the choice to stay when staying is difficult. A woman dismissed as just the sister became the person who literally brought someone back from the edge of death through her unwavering devotion. Sometimes a simple "I do" contains the power to change everything, not because of the words themselves, but because of the love and commitment behind them. If you believe that genuine love always conquers judgment and circumstance, share your thoughts below and subscribe to our channel to spread more stories that touch the heart and remind us what really matters in life.